Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome. We have a whole lot of people joining us tonight, so we're just going to take a minute and let everybody filter into the room here. Thank you for joining us. While everybody joins the room, there is going to be a poll available on your screen. Just a couple questions about who you are, what age group your student is in, if you are here representing your child, or if you're a student yourself, what age, what grade you're in. We would love to know more about who is in the audience, whether you're an educator, a parent, or otherwise. It will help our incredible panel better address both the questions and responses to everybody who is here tonight. Welcome as more people join. We're just giving everybody a few minutes to come in. We have a big group tonight. You'll notice the poll. I think we'll just give it another minute as the numbers keep going up here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome tonight to Ask the Experts, advice from top college admissions directors. My name is Diana Cohen. I am here representing Guidewell Education and all of the brands, whether you came here through Apple Ruth or Summit Education or ESM Prep or any of the amazing brands that are part of Guidewell Education. We're so excited that you are here tonight. And just briefly, I want to frame the evening for a moment. Why are we, Guidewell Education, doing this? Why is this amazing group of panelists here tonight? And most importantly, why are you all our audience here tonight? And I think what we all intuitively understand, what we all know from experience, is that this process of college admissions is both deeply personal and also filled with so many facts and information and changes. And trying to balance those two, trying to find what's right for you, your child, your family, your students, while understanding all of the information that's coming at you can be incredibly overwhelming. And part of our ethos here at Guidewell, what we care so deeply about and what makes all of our brands united is that we are focused on both empathy and expertise in everything that we do. So it is with that empathy that we are here tonight, it is with that empathy that our esteemed moderator, Paul Kanarek, is here tonight to share with the audience his experience and ask some great questions of our panelists to help get past some of the noise and really provide you with information so that you can make good decisions and take smart actions that make sense for your specific family. In terms of just some basic housekeeping items, please just go ahead if you want to submit questions throughout. You can do so using the Q&A function. Paul is a very experienced moderator. He will keep an eye on those. He also has a sense of what types of questions were submitted in advance and discussed in advance. So he will bring the night along that way. And, please don't worry if you feel that your questions were not addressed. I will share my personal email at the end of all of this in case people want to reach out to me. We will also be sharing the recording of this with every registrant after the fact. So please just try to absorb everything in the moment. We promise that we will follow up with information afterwards. And from there, I will let Paul take it from here. We are so lucky to have him as a moderator. He's probably seen this process from every angle, both advising individual students and families, running companies, working with schools. So, Paul, I will let you jump in and introduce our panel.
Thank you, Diana. She used the word esteemed, which I think is the fancy word for really, really, really old. And I qualify because I've been doing this for 40 years. My original entree, I was one of the five founders of the Princeton Review. I started in 1982 when pterodactyls roamed the globe. And admissions numbers weren't absurd. And one of the reasons I asked to do this is I have known the team at Guidewell for over a decade, and they just sort of get it, as does everyone here on the panel. They sort of understand that this, Diana used the word process, but for each of us as your panelists, we view it much more as a journey. Process is a bad lunch meat. A journey, it'll have trials and tribulations. Your flight's going to be delayed. They're going to lose at least one bag, but you're going somewhere cool. And if you sort of reframe it that this is a journey with a wonderful destination and four, if you can get away with it, five of the best years of your life, this can be just a blast. And the panelists we have sort of fit the bill of making it joyful. So we have Ashley from the University of Georgia, who shudderingly pointed out that she's going into her 10th year of doing this. And so, like so many of us began this career sort of in our early 20s as a passion play. We have Holly from the University of Miami, and there are few universities who have undergone such an uptick in popularity and fame as has that school. And I believe Holly's on sort of the side of the international banner. Speaking of accelerating universities, we have Christy, who in our chat ahead of time sort of mentioned that this year Northeastern went over 100,000 applications, and she mentioned it not to cause fear or terror, but just sort of like, wow, that's a really, really big number vis-a-vis when I started a while ago. And Christy has a small brief. She has the globe, and she did share that she once camped atop the Great Wall of China, as one does. And then Kenny, who can never, ever, ever be outdone, and is our gentleman from Syracuse, whose own child is a freshman at Syracuse. He wants to point out that he recently completed a sleepover in every state in our fine union, and the one that went last was New Mexico. I'm sure there's a story there involving an armadillo and a bad motel. We'll save it for a different day. Welcome, panelists. To start with, and it'll go to sort of Ashley and Holly. Ashley first. The South is really misunderstood as a destination for kids in college. It's marvelous. My own daughter goes to it, but in so many areas of our country, there's a misunderstanding of the South. Why is this so? And why, to pardon the expression, has the South risen so much in the land of university admissions? Ashley, you're up.
A great question, Paul. I born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina. Shout out Wofford College, small liberal arts school in Spartanburg, South Carolina, which is where I received my undergraduate degree. I've known nothing but, universities in the South. Wofford, very different from the University of Georgia that I represent now. It's hard to pinpoint exactly why. I think, we've experienced a shift in a rising popularity for the University of Georgia. I think the ease of applying since we joined the Common App. Our sports records don't hurt in terms of exposure. And I think it takes students visiting. Hearing from us as we've increased our recruitment efforts across the country, to understand it, just to experience it. Really rich culture. People are just really nice. You hear that a lot, but I think that, when families and students visit our campus, I hope, pleasantly surprised, or maybe not surprised at all, that they just feel at home there. And I think that's the case for a lot of institutions in the Southeast, and maybe part of what's drawing students that way, as well as affordability. We could go on and on with a lot of different reasons. I think there's been a shift. But I'm glad that people are coming to understand that the Southeast in particular is a really welcoming place for the most part, and a really great place to spend the next four years or so.
And then, sort of accompanying that, Holly, as the South has become more of a hotspot, clearly popularity breeds more applications, which breeds more competitiveness. What are your observations on that? And what has it sort of meant for you as you begin to evaluate all over the world the kinds of students who are going to fit your institution, please?
Yes, absolutely. And I do want to note, unlike Ashley, I am not from the South. I am a Vermonter. And so I have made a very purposeful choice to work for an institution very different from where I grew up. I'm also a small private liberal arts student myself. I went to undergrad at Carleton College in Minnesota. And so the South for me was new. But I think also, to speak to your point, Paul, it is an exciting time to engage with institutions that are in the Southeast and really use their place to an advantage, right? I think if you are excited about particular aspects of academia, I'm thinking at the University of Miami, if you want to study the Atlantic Ocean, there's no better place to do that than on the Atlantic Ocean. And so the students who are opting in to the kinds of academics that we have in the Southeast, and also the kind of extracurricular opportunities that come along with, as Ashley mentioned, that rich culture, are finding a really wonderful home. I don't think that our campuses are changing in terms of the fit, the feel, the vibes. You still have students who are deeply excited about their academic journey while balancing a lot going on outside of the classroom. I come from the ACC, not the SEC like Georgia, but I think you'll still find lots of school spirit really permeating throughout our campuses. I also think as students are willing to be adventurous, they're looking in new places. I wonder if that's a remnant of the pandemic. I also wonder if these ideas of selectivity are no longer just an East Coast idea like the Northeast. And we have panelists who can certainly speak to that. But I don't think there's a fear of selectivity. I think there's an excitement to engage in campuses that feel right, whether that's in the classroom, in a lab on the ocean, or outside of the classroom engaging with community as well.
Thank you. And for those of you who are listening, I hope you're seeing you're gonna get like direct and open and honest answers to honestly asked questions. And Christy, one just flowed in. It feels political, but it isn't, right? There are funding cuts happening. Um, as you sort of look in your crystal ball over the next 3 or 4 years, if you've got a kid interested in STEM, how do you sort of manage this fear of funding cuts? How do you process that? How do you duck around where it might be painful? That one's for you.
Yeah, it's a great question. And every institution is going to have a different answer. And I think that you're going to hear on our panel a lot today. The common response is it depends. But if that is something that isn't really important to you during your college search process, I do really think that that's a great question to ask every individual institution. Northeastern, for example, does have an Office of Undergraduate Research. So we do have a team of folks that will help connect students to undergraduate research opportunities if that's something that excites them. The other thing is with our co-op program, students do have the opportunity to do research outside of our university. And so that is completely separate from any funding. We've been really lucky as an institution to not have been impacted dramatically by any funding changes over the last couple months. And I think it's hard to really predict what it will look like over the coming weeks, months, and years. But I would really recommend asking institutions that you're interested in, have you had cuts? Where does your research funding come from? And not only that, but for your undergraduate research opportunities, are students typically working on federally funded grant opportunities? Are they working more on like a local grant, for example, from like REI or from their university? I think typically on the undergraduate level, funding is typically done a little bit more in-house since there's if there's federal funding coming into play, they're really looking for high level experts in the field. But once again, definitely a great question. And really, once again, going to be institution by institution.
Thank you. Kenny, one of the wonderful things about Syracuse is it's been sort of a remarkably steady, consistent institution. It's almost been Goldilocks. The admissions numbers stay fairly steady, the yield numbers stay fairly steady, the culture stays fairly steady. But even within your institution, there are sort of first amongst equals. So within Syracuse, what are the most popular programs, and how does applying to them impact an applicant?
So when students are looking at Syracuse, there's 10 different schools and colleges, and other schools may operate this way as well. We try to be forthcoming in all of our sessions to talk about which programs can be more competitive. For us, it would include architecture, communications, the Newhouse School, as well as sport management and sport analytics. I think the biggest key is to make sure that you do your research with different schools, to see which program and not make any assumptions. I think it's easy to make an assumption that a certain program could be competitive at a school that you're looking at. But I think the key there is to make sure that you're doing your research, to ask what those are if you haven't been told that already. But admissions officers should be transparent with that information.
And thank you. And then, Ashley, if I recall, Georgia is one of the rare public flagships that admits independent of major, or do I have that wrong?
You know, you're spot on, Paul. So through our admissions review process, we review first year applications holistically. And so there are a lot of factors that we take into consideration, but intended major is not, we are not admitting into intended major. We have so many to choose from. Kind of our model for student, irrespective of what they think their interest may be, or a student that doesn't know it all, has some time to figure that out. And there are, much like Kenny speaking to more selective programs, there are certain schools and colleges and academic programs that do require a separate application process later on, but nothing that students need to worry about right now. So they're applying as a first year student, they're admitted. Yay, we'd love to have you. Join us, take some time, get your feet wet, and then decide what you want to do academically.
I think Christy gave you the watchwords very early on. A lot of these answers are it depends, right? We have 4 institutions here, more than 2,000 in North America. Goodness gracious knows how many globally. And they're all going to have slightly different answers to this particular question. And it goes back to what Christy and Holly both said, which is remember to ask. There's a bunch of questions flashing into the Q&A, some of which are very workaday. So I'm going to quickly pound through those. Are all schools expecting to see standardized tests again? Absolutely not. Most will continue to remain test blind or test optional. Does it matter whether it's ACT or SAT? Basically, no. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. How do institutions manage their wait lists? That's, as Christy said, it depends upon the institution. Guys, Google, common data set, insert name of university here. They put their waitlist data in. If you want to go next level, chat GPT that bad boy. You'll get a good answer. But here's one, Holly, that I am fascinated to hear your answer in. It's quite graphic, actually. The enrollment cliff. The lemmings hurling themselves into mass oblivion. What is the expected impact of the enrollment cliff? Holly, you get to go first. Christy, you get to go second.
Yeah, it's a privilege to take this question. Nathan Graw, the economist who actually wrote about this first, he is a professor at Carleton College. And so I'm excited to get to respond. And I think the first piece is do not worry. We have this under control. We have been identifying various moments, whether this is an enrollment cliff, whether it is institutional specific at our colleges and universities for decades. And so when it comes to, I imagine the question is saying, how does this impact me as an individual? The answer is, it depends. Overall, however, the enrollment cliff is the idea that there will be fewer students graduating from U.S. high schools in the upcoming years than we have seen recently. This is not to say this will be the fewest number of students graduating from U.S. high schools ever. This is not to say that we only admit students who graduate from U.S. high schools. Christy and I would not be in our positions if that were the case. And also, I think it's important to note that this enrollment cliff is not expected to hit every state and every region in the same way. And so you may find that some of the schools that you are considering have different demographic results in the upcoming years. Maybe instead of being a regional institution, they become more national and vice versa. But what I do hope you are hearing is that this is not an unexpected moment, and this is not one that is going to negatively impact your college search and your experience therein.
Keep going, Christy.
Yeah, that was great, Holly. I was like, wow, how can I even add to that necessarily? The one thing that I do want to point out is that so I've been in this field for 13 years. within the first 6 months that I was working, I just graduated college. My boss's boss told me about this concept. So to Holly's point, this is not new news. This is something that's been very much top of mind for our industry for at least a decade. Can't speak to longer, but at least in my experience. And the other thing I want to point out and how it relates to your individual college search is that no one's going to wake up one day and all of a sudden all these students are going to disappear. We're talking about a very large common data set over many years, and it just shows a little bit of a trend. So when you're talking about like the acceptance rate of a school or the average SATs or GPA of a school, it's very, very rare for those things to dramatically change 20 points, 30 points in any direction going from one year to another. So if you're a junior right now and you're thinking about, is this a reach school for me? Is this, a target school for me? Those things, just like all large common data sets, they move in very slow and incremental pieces. So I just want to reassure you that the information that you're learning about a school a year before you're applying or the year you are applying is not going to be dramatically different than the applicant pool that you're seeing the year that you decide to apply.
The enrollment cliff, as both of our speakers mentioned, is not likely to impact your ability to get into a popular school. Part of that is kids are applying to more schools. So for you as parents, you might have applied to 3 colleges. Kids now average 8. You're replicating like bad DNA. Secondly, as Holly and Christy both pointed out from the international perspective, gang, there's 8 million high school seniors in India alone. And American colleges are considered to be the best in the world. That's more in that one country than we have in the entire United States, right? There's not going to be a shortage of people wanting to come here. It will put some financial pressure, likely, on smaller private schools, and we're starting to see that play out, and we're going to watch that. But for the institutions represented here, oh my goodness, there's really sort of no cliff. It's a tsunami of applications, and that's something you should be aware of. Ashley, if you want to look in the Q&A area, you have a fan club. If you want to sort of answer any of those questions and type away, there's mad love
I
for
was
you
about
happening. Yeah,
to message you to the side. So
yeah, you
guys
are
know
more than
I am
welcome.
focused, but I'll tackle some of it.
Kenny, many people have asked about this thing called demonstrated interest. And for the gang, demonstrated interest is like if you show you want to go really, really badly, you're more likely to get in. What's your take on that? A, at Syracuse, and B, within the larger ecosystem?
Within the larger ecosystem, demonstrated interest may or may not be a factor for schools. I think the percentage is roughly 50% of schools that utilize demonstrated interest in the process. At Syracuse, we do use it as part of our decision making. And again, that's something we try to be transparent about to our prospective students. It could be a bunch of different ways too. I think sometimes people focus on some of the obvious, like the campus tour, open houses, things that are on campus. But you can also, if you're doing a national search, there are plenty of things that students can do from the comfort of their own homes, such as virtual tours, virtual information sessions, mock classes that are done virtually. So there's a lot of options that students can just do from home. On top of that, demonstrated interest could be counted in other ways depending on the school, but some schools could track how many times you visit a college website or if you open emails from that school. I think the biggest thing is to not really fret about demonstrated interest because it should occur naturally. If you've got the schools on your list and you are genuinely interested in them, you likely will show demonstrated interest in some capacity. I forgot to mention also applying early. ED, EA, we don't have EA, but early decision, early action are other ways that students can show demonstrated interest as well.
Yeah, the most powerful expression of love is to apply early. Independently of that, Holly, independently of applying ED or EA at Miami, do you look much at demonstrated interest, or is it sort of like we don't really care?
It's a good question. And we think a lot about this idea of engagement. Because again, our students are applying from all over the world and all over the United States. And so how are you engaging with us? And one of the ways we tend to see that is through the supplemental essay. How are you able to show that you've engaged with our materials, whether in person or virtually or in some combination, so that you can respond well? And when I say well, I mean true to yourself and specifically to the University of Miami, right? It makes me so sad when I read an essay that, doesn't actually speak to my institution. Sometimes it may even name a different institution. And so I would say that is a component of this engagement that Kenny is talking about, that can be seen in like a very tangible way by your admissions officers, through the supplemental essay, if that is part of the application, and it is at the University of Miami.
Christy, do you want to add on to that? Or is Holly continually stealing all your best answers?
So this is, I think, another great example of how it's going to depend. So Northeastern doesn't have a supplemental essay. We do take demonstrated interest into consideration, but we're going to, our perspective and our lens on that engagement and demonstrated interest is going to look different than a Syracuse or a University of Miami. And so I think a really good example of that, which Kenny did call out briefly, is early decision. Early decision is definitely the strongest factor of demonstrated interest when it comes to our application review process, because we intend each year to enroll about half of our class through the ED applicant pool. That, I think, is another great question to ask as you're learning about institutions, to better understand where that weight might come into play when it comes to the review process. But another thing that I do want to call out with that is that you really only want to apply early decision if you feel 100% confident and comfortable that this is the right fit school for you. And fit is three things. It is academics, it is socials, but it's also most importantly finances. So you want to have a really good understanding of what the financing of attending that institution would look like without having your decision, because early decision is binding. So just another quick note and things to think about as you're determining what type of institution you'd want to apply to with that.
I love this because I learn things. That was a wonderful phrasing. It's academic, it's social, and it's financial. I'll be stealing that, Christy. You'll never get credit. So I'm going to apologize in advance, but no, at this one moment in time, you nailed it. Okay.
I'll take it. Thanks, Paul.
Ashley, I don't know why. Maybe it's because we did this last year, but I always give you the hardest questions. How are you using AI at all to filter applications, like even in the first read? Like how's the tool being used?
So I feel particularly qualified this year, Paul, to address this one. I recently, our head honcho over all things application process is now our director, David Graves. And so he let a colleague and I help have more of a hand in our file review training and process, which has been awesome to help get our team normed and train all of our readers to read as efficiently, but also equitably and thoroughly as possible. I can promise you, you heard it here first, well, hopefully not first, that we are not using AI for any of our reads. We of course have a process of filtering applications in the beginning. We have a finite amount of time to review applications, and kind of going back to your previous question, just to hit on for a second, we have an early action process. We're sort of shifting to where students need to know that we don't track demonstrated interest, and for the University of Georgia, applying early action doesn't give you a leg up in the admissions process at all. And in fact, we are encouraging students and trying to be very transparent that students really need to look at our middle 50% profile, and specifically the test scores, which are the least important academic factor in our review. But that is one way we filter through which files actually get read in that early process, rather than students that need to be comfortable with being deferred if they're not in those middle ranges. And so there are some filtering processes and all kinds of queries and reports that are run, but artificial intelligence is not utilized to review those applications.
And Christy, you almost leapt out of that, but your seat when this came up. So keep it going.
No, This is a question that's been coming up a lot more and more, and I think Holly phrased it really well when she was speaking about the enrollment cliff. I think really the purpose of this question is for I'm assuming for folks to understand, how is artificial intelligence going to impact my chance of getting in if a school is deciding to use AI? This is still, and just like with all industries, this is still super, super new. Northeastern is also not using AI as a part of their review process. I know other schools are exploring and piloting those options, but what I do want to be really clear is that at the end of the day, we are still looking for the right fit student. And even if an office were to be using AI, it would be to help with the really mundane operational processing pieces of our review that don't have to do with a human. For example, some schools recalculate GPAs. Right now, like for example, Northeastern recalculates all 100,000 GPAs by hand by seasonal temporary workers. That sounds like it could, in theory, one day become a good job for AI because they can read a transcript and it can just pop it out. And that will allow us to then spend more time on actually understanding you as a person to make sure that you are going to be a good fit academically, socially, and financially, once again, for our university. So I want to reassure you that the folks that are in the admissions field are really passionate about this work. We're not in it for the money, I'll tell you that much. And so we would never compromise, our ability to get to know students and make sure that we're admitting students to our community by pushing someone through some form of algorithm or AI. If it were to be implemented, it would just be to help with those other pieces. Once again, I'm not speaking from personal experience, but I hope that eases any concerns or questions that you might be asking when it comes to that.
Kenny, I'm coming to you next, but I want to step back. For those of you who are with us, you got 4 people looking you in the virtual eye. They're not lying to you. This is mission-driven work. And what we have discovered over the years is that for most of our applicants, the answer to the question of, is this person academically talented enough to succeed here? The answer is quite often yes. But the second question is, will they like it here? Will we like them here? Do we see the future sort of flowering for them here? Do they fit us? That's a deeply subjective question. And it takes real empathy and humanity to answer that question. That's a people job. And that's the segue to your question, Kenny. You got thousands and thousands and thousands of applications, and it's a constant that it beggars belief for parents and students that these applications get any real time or any real love or any real attention. Tell me why they do and how they do.
They do get attention because it's a human process, and like my colleagues were saying, that we're looking at every single file, we're looking at every single application, and sometimes, many of the time, it's multiple touches on an application as well. So you're having multiple readers reviewing one file too, and it's not just about academic. We talked about holistic review. Someone had mentioned that earlier on our team. Where we're looking at every part of an application. There are certain characteristics that each of our schools may be looking for. Like at Syracuse, for example, when we're going through different parts of the application, we want to see, and I think other schools will agree with us too, but in particular, we look for students who have that welcoming nature, who are going to be open to other students and other cultures. It's a very spirited, energetic place at Syracuse. And so that's another piece that we're looking for as well amongst our student population. So, that's not something that I think AI can generate. That's something that we're going to be looking through and making sure that a student's going to be a great fit for us as well. Like you said, there are a lot of students who are admissible to our institution. But at the same time, there is a finite amount of space physically on our campus. So there are decisions that need to be made, but those are some examples of characteristics that we might look at as we're going through the review process.
We love the fact there are up to 34 questions in the answer box, while I know that many of my panelist colleagues are typing away like mad people. Diana, would you please drop your personal email address, your email address into the chat? I know
Yes.
you would mention that because this way, if someone's individual question doesn't get answered, they can just email you after the presentation and you can answer it for them. I mean, people are spending time and effort. We'd love to sort of accommodate them. Holly, I'm going to shift gears entirely. I have a student with a learning difference. She's neurodiverse. She has a 504 plan. I have fear that revealing this will damage my chances to be accepted at your school. Now, I know the answer to this question as Paul, but Holly, please set their mind at ease. You're up.
Yes, do not have fear. Our institutions are built to support students with all kinds of different backgrounds, whether that is neurodivergence, whether that is something physical, that means you need to use our ramps and our elevators located all over our schools, whether that is English as a second language support. This is all at all of our institutions. And I would even say acknowledging that 504 plan is really helpful. It lets us know who to connect you with so that when you are admitted, we can say, here is the office, the contact, the individual that you need to be in touch with to make sure that we get your information transferred over so that we have the information we need to make this be a smooth transition for you academically, socially, physically, in any way that is appropriate for you and your family. So I would say disclosing that is actually the best thing you can do for yourself or for your child to ensure that the institution is prepared to support you in the ways that you deserve.
Because following Holly is not fun, Christy, I'm going to rephrase the question, and it's not easy. It's my job is to take questions and try and spin them in a way to make them compelling. Could you give me a situation where actually revealing a neurodiversity or something like that would be a disadvantage?
A disadvantage.
I told you I was going to spin it differently.
Um, that's a really hard question to answer because we don't look at an application and we are understanding the whole person. And so it's very hard for us to be like, this one thing is what pushes them into being admitted, or this one thing is what held us back from being able to offer them. So I can't think of that because that's not really how, at least in my professional experience, I viewed applications. What I can say is that if a student feels comfortable sharing those things, it can be helpful because it provides context, right? So let's say a student, in grades 9 and 10 was maybe struggling in a class because they had an undiagnosed learning disability or learning difference that they weren't aware of. They then were diagnosed, they got the supports they need, and all of a sudden we see a really strong jump in their grades from 11 to 12. If that information is shared with us on the application, we may be able to overlook those lower grades that might not fall below our that would typically maybe fall below our academic threshold because we understand what was going on. If we didn't have that information, then we may say, oh, like maybe they weren't trying, like we don't know, like we can never make assumptions. And that's the most important thing is we can only ever use the information that's provided on the application. So Paul, I apologize. I know that's not directly answering your question, but typically I think sharing as much as possible to give us the best understanding of who you are as a person is really a benefit. I don't think withholding information, if it's information you feel comfortable sharing, is ever going to necessarily be a disadvantage.
Your answer did not surprise me. It reinforced two things. The first is we in admissions don't wake up in the morning rubbing our hands together gleefully saying, how do I reject the kid today? It's not why we're here, right? And the second is context is everything. Everything for us. I will answer the question in one way. If you're going to talk about anxiety, you've got to be very, very careful about how you present anxiety. It has to be part of the context. It has to be part of your journey. You have to sort of give the impression that you have sort of, look the devil in the eye and come out the other side. Anxiety sort of just thrown out there and not well described. I very rarely see that being helpful in a college application. And that's the only one that I know of. Let's see. I haven't bothered Kenny in a while, and then I'll go to Ashley next. Kenny, GPA or course rigor? Pick your poison. Which one matters to you?
Yes. It would,
Continue.
well, so schools will look at things in a holistic fashion. So both academics and rigor are going to come into play for most institutions. I know that there are, different students on this call who are at different points with rigor. So I think the general message would be that if you've been successful on a specific level and have received A's and B's on one level, it may be that time for next year, unless course selection is done for next year, to challenge yourself for the following year. So that's where I would say that regardless of where you are in terms of rigor, it also depends on what your school offers too, because schools across the country are completely different in terms of high schools of what there is to offer. So we're certainly looking within the context of what your school provides, and that. But that being said, depending on where you are, if you're able to challenge yourself, I would.
And then like Ashley, another question I got asked is, some students do dual enrollment. And for those of you on the call, that's like you do high school stuff and college stuff at the same time, right? And other students are in AP classes and other students are in IB classes. When you're evaluating an applicant, Ashley, is there any difference with how you look at that, or is it all within the context?
Context is the magic word. It is all within the context of your school for us. And this is also the age-old question that we get over and over again. And it's a very valid question because rigor and grades earned in core courses are our top two academic factors we're focusing on. But dual enrollment, AP, IB, coursework, if all three of those options are offered, our default is you're maxing that rigor. You are challenging yourself to the highest level possible. For some students, it's going to be a mix of dual enrollment and AP. Dual enrollment is a great cost saving. Some students may pursue dual enrollment all of junior and senior year and almost have an associate's degree by the time they graduate high school. It really is in the context of your school and what you're interested in. Within those rigor designations, we want to see that you're challenging yourself across the core areas the best that you're able. But if you hate math, while you are probably going to have to at least take one math course in college, and we want to see that you are challenging yourself in math, you don't have to take every single AP math course available. Take what you're interested in, what's going to help you ultimately once you get to college and pursue that major.
Holly, over to you. I'm going to spin this again slightly differently. Applicant A. She loves English. She does a lot of heavy work in English. She does dual enrollment in English. She doesn't like math. Math doesn't like her. She's applying as an English major. So she's in an advanced English curriculum, but takes ordinary math. That's applicant A. Applicant B is quite strong in everything that she chooses to do and has taken advanced classes across the entire spectrum. How would you view those applicants differently, if at all, Holly?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think I've got two answers, Paul. The first is directly related to what Ashley said, which is perhaps the high schools that these two students attend have different curricula available, right? Kenny was noting you can only take what's available, right? But let's assume these students are at the same high school. What I heard from the question is we've got a student who's excited about English applying into an English degree. At the University of Miami, you do apply directly into a major within a particular school and college. For us, English is within the College of Arts and Sciences. Arts and Sciences would say, great, we are excited to teach you. This is wonderful. This is an admissible, a competitive applicant. For the other student, if they're well-rounded across the board, great, wonderful. Are you applying into music? Have you auditioned? Are you applying into architecture? Did you create a portfolio already? Or is this new for you? Are you going to be applying without a portfolio? Some of those additional components, depending on what they're applying into at an institution like UM, because again, you do apply directly into a major in a specific school or college, will also dictate some of the admissibility there for these students. So like Christy kind of gestured to, even within the question, it may depend at an institution and certainly across institutions. But rigor, grades, yes, will both be evaluated, and the specifics of the institution. Are we applying to Georgia, where we apply to the university on the whole? Are we applying to UM, where it's specific to the major? Will also impact admissibility for these candidates.
Christy, I'm coming to you next, but I'm going to set this up from a question with Stephanie. She says, so do I now have to do dual enrollment on top of my 3 AP classes? Absolutely not, Stephanie. You don't have to, unless there's a class that's so interesting to you. Like, I don't know, I love photography. I've always wanted to figure out photography. My local community college has it, so I choose to do it. Absolutely. If it's a choice, if you think it's a mandate, I promise you, all of us would look you in the eye and say it is not. And that sets up the question for you, Christy. For this panel, you represent a school that has the quote unquote highest selectivity index, the lowest acceptance rates. So, in a school like this, speak to academic rigor, speak to this concept of I must do AP everything, including lunch.
Yeah.
All yours.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are looking, and as Kenny was talking about before, we're looking at GPA and we're looking at rigor. And I think the best way to think about this is, you know, 2 students can have a 4.0 or even above a 4.0 GPA, but one student could be taking all elective classes in grade 12, you know, like I don't even know. I can't think of a class right now, but things that are not like core STEM subject, you know, or core subjects like your English or history, your math, especially in grade 12, those are not required classes necessarily. So usually it's just like a math and an English. Everything else can be optional. Versus a 4.0 student that is taking all those core classes. Maybe they're taking AP, maybe they're taking dual enrollment. So we are looking for students that are academically rigorous, doing well in their classes, but also in a rigorous schedule, with the caveat that we are looking within the context of the school. And I know that we've been talking about that quite a bit, right? Like, we understand that if you are from a rural high school, you know, and almost the entire county is at this high school, and you're traveling really far to get there, there might not be as many opportunities to do things such as dual enrollment, or there might only be 3 AP classes at that high school, versus someone that might be from a very, you know, wealthy area that has a very strong public school system, or they're at a private school where everyone is doing an IB diploma, or everyone is doing 5 APs and dual enrollment. We're looking within that context. It is perfectly okay. You don't need to over push yourself. We don't want you to overload yourself so much that it impacts your grades, but we do want you to challenge yourself. Just be reassured that we just want to see what that challenge looks like within what you've been provided. If your school only has 3 AP classes, if you are taking all 3 of those AP classes, you are considered most rigorous within that context. And that is very similar to a student that might be, and when we're looking at that rigor, we're only looking at the applicants from within your school within that.
I'm starting to see a whole bunch of questions pop up that are based in fear. What if I've done this wrong? What if I've done this wrong? What if I got that 1B my 9th grade year? What if I have ADHD and classes are harder for me? What if I have an A minus rather than an A? I'm just going to search for all of those questions. I promise you, academically, the question we are asking ourselves is, can this kid handle the work at our school? It's truly what it is. It's not a pure meritocracy. It's like, if we bring them in here, will they be able to hack it? Sometimes that's the major you pick. Sometimes it's your academic excellence. It's different for every kid. We're not looking for reasons to say no. I promise you. And with that in mind, Kenny, I know people love to ask the question, what mistake should I avoid? But that is centered in negative. So I'm going to flip it. Kenny, it's 10 o'clock in the evening. You're on your 8th cup of coffee. The cat just threw up in the corner. There's a new application in front of you. What would make your heart sing as you began to read it?
Students whose genuine voice is heard in any writing portion of the application. I do have a cat, by the way. So the essay, the supplemental, which we do, I know not all schools have them, but the supplemental essay, additional information, you talked about, some of these concerns that students may have when they're filling out the application. The additional information might be a good spot to just provide us with a little more context. So I think it's space that you can control is what I enjoy seeing. I mean, I enjoy other parts of the application too, like the transcript and other parts, but some of which you can't really control at that moment. But for me, I think it's the writing specifically, which you do have control over fully.
Well, let's keep going with that. Ashley, how long does it take in an essay for you to smell dad's writing on his daughter's application?
It's a great question. The reality is, well, to preface, I think that the college essay is this, speaking of fear, this big fearful thing that I think for a lot of you listening in, if you're in high school right now, I answered a few questions actually earlier of, when are you going to post your topics, your prompts for this upcoming admission cycle? Of course, prep and try your best and, revise drafts of your essay and get someone you trust who knows you well to read over it and give you feedback. But at the end of the day, your essay, like Kenny noted, it is oftentimes a very bright spot for us as application file reviewers. And it's really enjoyable to hear your voice through your essay, especially for schools that aren't able to do interviews. It's very much like a written interview to get to know you better. Your essay is not going to make or break your admission decision. And I say that very confidently. We require two, they're pretty brief. The reality is, do we know if your dad wrote it? Probably not at the end of the day. Usually if your dad's writing it or you're using AI, it's not doing what it would do for us if you wrote it and we hear your voice through it. It's hard to explain how we kind of know, but it just isn't as impactful. But at the end of the day, we have to trust, that it's your work, much like your English teachers trust that your English papers are your work. And it's really an opportunity for you it's more space for you to tell us more of your story, to fill in the gaps, and having somebody else write it for you or turning to ChatGPT is wasting that opportunity.
I'm impressed in that we've answered 40 of the questions in the box, a bunch of others, and we have 55 more. That's like the kudzu, they're multiplying. I want to give the panelists a quick heads up that in a couple of minutes, I'm going to ask each of you to give your final words of wisdom to the upcoming class that's going to apply in whichever way you want. Holly, for you, kids will often say, I don't have leadership, or I don't have community service, or I don't have a sport. They'll sort of paint it within the I don't have. But for you as an evaluator, what are you looking for in the activities? Why do they matter? What do they reveal?
Yes, I love this question. I'm going to start with what do they reveal, right? For us, as a whole here on this screen, in the profession, what you are revealing is how you contribute, right? Whether that's contributing at the family level, right? Do you take care of your abuela on the weekends? Are you in charge of driving your younger sibling to school in the mornings? Do you contribute to your high school? Are you involved in clubs? Do you shelve books at the library? Are you an athlete? Are you a mix of all of these different things? And also at the scale of your community. Are you in scouts? Do you pick up trash off the side of the road on the weekend? Are you employed? Do you contribute to a job, to a professional setting? Have you had an internship? And so all of these different ways in terms of who you contribute to and how you contribute to your various scales of community are revealed through that activities list. I think sometimes students are saying, well, I don't do anything. I have such a long commute. Golly, please tell us about that commute. We do recruit often by territory so that we can get to understand your school, your location. I think a lot about, again, I grew up in a rural location. For me, everybody drove. The idea of taking public transit terrifies me to this day. But the students were saying, oh, well, I took 3 buses and a subway, and that's my everyday. For me, is constantly amazing. Oh my goodness, it took you an hour to get to school today and to go home. Those are ways that you are filling your time, and that is part of the effort that you put forward to get this education. So I would say that is part of the reveal. I think when it comes to leadership, students often also say, oh, I need a particular title in order to say I am a leader. I think it would behoove, and that's kind of an annoying word. I think it would be helpful for students to think about leadership as well. Again, in terms of these contributions to others, are you mentoring? Do people look up to you? Have you been in a club or organization for multiple years? Have you stepped in when there's been a gap? Again, younger siblings, household chores. Are you managing at a job? Do you engage with customers? There are lots of ways that leadership is not just, I had a lead role in the theater performance, or I am this specific rank in the Girl Scout troop. And so I do think there are many ways to consider the contributions that students have, other than kind of normal words that maybe are put up in movies or in books, if
Thank
that
you.
is a helpful response.
What sort of the nub of our evening? Christy, what are Christy's final words of wisdom for our 324 attendees?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to reassure you all that you are all going to end up where you belong, and that college is what you make of it. You could go to the best college in the world, and if you just go to class and then lay in bed and doom scroll till the next day, that is not going to open as many doors than a student that goes to maybe a school considered slightly less rigorous or slightly less well-known, that are putting themselves out there, networking, doing internships, doing research, being a TA. That is going to open more doors for a student. So I want to reassure you that I know that this is a daunting process. I hope this conversation helps you see that we are humans and that we want to help you. I know we haven't answered everything, so please reach out to us because we're happy to keep the conversation going.
Kenny, while your last name is not Sagacity, I'm going to ask for your words of wisdom here. What is your final sort of group thing you want to say?
I would advise families to watch Gilmore Girls season 3. I just watched it with my daughter, and it's the college search process. It's like a panel in itself. Paris Geller is worried about how many activities she's doing to try to get into Harvard, and Rory at one point says to her mom, "Can we just go 24 hours without saying the word college?" Rory's got her dream school, but spoiler alert, doesn't happen. So I think there's just lessons there that are kind of in a humorous way, but just to take a breath, like Christy was saying, you'll be okay in this process, and you'll end up like she said, where you'll need to be. There's a great book out there called "Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be." Where you go is not who you'll be. So that could be a good read for you this weekend.
Kenny, I never expected I'd learn the names of the Gilmore Girl characters tonight. Thank you for exceeding my expectations. Ashley, Southern words of wisdom.
I don't know how to follow that up though, Paul. Man, I need to go watch Gilmore Girls. You have me wanting to restart, Kenny. I could get on a soapbox, which we don't have time for, but about how much I know all of us obviously believe in higher education and want to help you through this process, but sometimes it gets so frustrating and makes me sad, just to be honest, how much pressure you all put on yourselves. I like to think about it through the lens, or try to think about it through the lens, of a high school student. This is perhaps the biggest decision you've ever made, and where to apply to go to college, where to go based on offers of acceptance. If you're so caught up in perfecting the recipe of number of AP courses and honors courses and taking the SAT 4 different times, what's it all for? What's the joy in high school if you're not enjoying your high school years and making memories with your friends? And I know it's stressful. We can't just toss it to the side and say, just don't worry about it. It'll all work out. Obviously, it takes effort on your part. But at the end of the day, we've talked about it. There are nearly 4,000 degree granting institutions in the US. I really think there's more than one fit for everybody. Know that in most cases, it's not you, it's us, that we're the Office of Admission. We're not the Office of Denial. We are trying to give you the benefit of the doubt when able, and to try to view your application through the brightest lens we can. And usually comes down to space, but know that it makes us the happiest when we can tell you're really enjoying your high school years and you're able to then reflect on that in your application. So take a breath,
Thank you.
focus on what you can.
Diana, be ready to launch the poll soon. Holly, you have the final word.
Yes, thank you. And I love what Ashley just said. We are offices of admission, not denial. It is our utmost privilege to advocate on your behalf. That is our role, to take what you are providing us through that application and advocate for you. And so just know that we fiercely have your back and we are rooting for you throughout the process, whether you apply to our institution or not. We will be some of your greatest advocates.
Diana, thank you for hosting us. The final poll is coming up. And remember, the holy trinity of colleges is one where your kid will be happy, where the college will say yes and accept her, that you can afford to send him to. Diana, take it away.
Just want to, first of all, thank our panelists. There is nothing that proves more that this is a mission-driven work than after finishing a crazy admissions season, they say, yes, we will spend our evening with you because they love what they do so much and they care about students and helping them get good information. So thank you to all of you. Thank you, Paul, for hosting this conversation. To your point about this being a journey, I think my favorite part of tonight is when Holly and Ashley spoke with so much pride about where they went to school and how it clearly shaped them and launched so much more beyond college. And I think that's a really important takeaway tonight. It's certainly why I've been doing this work for over a decade, because you get to see this long journey that people are on. So with that, please fill out the poll. Let us know how we can help you here at Guidewell Education. Here is my email, diana@guidewelleducation.com, in case we miss something, and you will receive the recording from us. Probably tomorrow or the next day as soon as we can get that out. So just thank you to everybody for your time tonight. And I think that's a wrap. Good night, everybody.
Bravo. Thank you, one and all. Cheers.